updates. Good morning, Tobago. Wake up with Candace and
Good morning, and welcome back to Good Morning Tobago right here on Tobago Updates. Guys, you know when you see me sitting here, it's because we're about to have those conversations that you want to have to get your morning started and ask those questions that you want asked. Now, as you know, in the political front here in Tobago, a number of things have been unfolding, and the conversations continue to go on both nationally and locally in regards to how the political scene and environment is evolving here on the island of Tobago. And this morning, we're going to continue that conversation a bit, but we're going to diversify that conversation by speaking a lot about what's happening on the infrastructure front here on the island. And to have that conversation with me this morning, I have the privilege of sitting with Assemblyman Trevor James, who is the Secretary for the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development. Good morning, Mr. James.
Good morning, Shenelle. Good morning, Tobago. Happy to be here.
It's always a pleasure to have you here, we must say. This morning, you know, a lot has been happening. We're not necessarily going to address that only, but it has been a key topic. Everything that has been unfolding in terms of the conversation between the Prime Minister and the Chief Secretary here on the island. You know, we could say that it kind of was prompted by the statement that the Prime Minister would have made, but then other persons may say, well, it was started even when the licensing officers decided to come to Tobago without, you know, having the requisite communication with the Division of Education. And from a number of those things that we've been seeing happening, this has really caused a strain on the relationship between the two islands. So I want to first ask you, in relation to that relationship between the THA and the central government at this time, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, Shana, just to go back to how you introduced this section, I think we in Tobago have to be clear in the language we use, because the language affects the kids who are coming up and their perception and their, you know, their interpretation of what Tobago is. You know, we cannot refer to Tobago as the island and Trinidad as national. If a conversation is taking place in Trinidad, then the conversation taking place in Trinidad. A conversation that takes place in Trinidad is not national, and one that takes place in Tobago is not island. Right. So we have to find a way
right. But
to
for
use
a long
better
time,
terms
we have understood that the central government covers us nationally, while the THA covers Tobago locally. Is that not so?
That is a different way of putting it. But I'm saying when there's a conversation in Trinidad, because that's where the conversation is.
At the central government level?
No, at the government level. It is in Trinidad. There's a government in Tobago, whether people in Trinidad like it or not. The people in Tobago vote for an assembly to govern its relationship with Trinidad, to govern the issues in Tobago according to the 5th schedule, and we are in fact governing. The government in Trinidad governs Trinidad and governs Tobago only as it relates to 6th and 7th schedule. And we must be clear as to that. When we talk about, you never hear Trinidadian talking about on the island. And we have to adopt language that speaks to where we want to go. The Trinidadians say in the country.
Right.
And we say on the island, as if we are subordinate. And that's the relationship that has developed because of how the country has been run. Now, in terms of the relationship with Trinidad and Tobago, I think we have a good relationship. We have different political parties in Trinidad running the government in Trinidad, and we have a different political party in Tobago, and you are bound to have differences of opinions, and that's healthy. We're bound to have discussions, and that is healthy. The Constitution, the laws that govern the relationship speak to a consultative process, and we believe strongly that those in Trinidad and Port of Spain have not been consulting, and they take action unilaterally without the courtesy of even a telephone call. And we just will not stand for that. And I don't think the people of Tobago will want to vote for a representative that sits back and let a public servant in Trinidad come to Tobago and do whatever he wants. I don't think that's what the people vote for. I don't think the people will appreciate that. I think if you look at the comments generally, the majority of people are saying that that kind of behavior is not to be accepted.
Right. But we will get deeper into that entire conversation of the whole understanding the jurisdictions that the THA has here in Tobago. But before we get into that conversation, I want to speak a little on the city of Scarborough, which is one of your major projects that you have been working on. So where are we at in regards to that city of Scarborough project?
The master plan for the redevelopment of Scarborough, as you know, as the population knows, we came to the people in what we think is the biggest consultative process ever had in Trinidad and Tobago. And consequent to that, we went out through a consultant to develop a feasibility study to determine how we should go, where we should go with the project. I'm happy to report that the final report is in. The Executive Council is now reviewing the report, and it should be made public shortly, maybe early in the month of May. And then we again will go back out to the people to have another consultation, and again virtual, where the people will have a chance to see again and to contribute to the final designs as we move forward. We are on the way. We have had expressed interest from major external financiers, and we think we are in a good place to start something grand in Tobago.
Right, and as you spoke about the position with financiers, talk to us a little bit about that, because we know that currently the THA is under a lot of financial strain, as has been expressed by the Chief Secretary in his discussions about the development budget and wanting to do a number of development projects on the island, but not having the sufficient financial resources to do so. So outside of the central government, what are some of the resources that you guys would be tapping into to get that job done?
Well, we are exploring different contractual arrangements to get the project done. We strongly believe, though, that the government in Trinidad should fund the project. The government in Trinidad has funded ports in LNG, ports in Mayaro, ports in, they're now doing a port in Toco, they sponsored a port in Labidco, port in Port of Spain, port in Point Lisas. They're building a road to Pigeon to Point 14 that's costing $6-7 billion. They have over the years together, just for the Ministry of Works, the budget for the Ministry of Works for the last 4 or 5 years is in excess of $10 billion. The budget for development in the Works Division is on average $75 million per year. And so the vast difference between how Trinidad has developed and how Tobago is developing is a consequence of budget. We've been at this dance for autonomy since I was a boy. And we have struggled to get this internal self-government, and every step of the way, those that take power in Trinidad continue to constrain us. They continue to give us 4.03%. They continue to take our resources. They continue to take our resources, Shenelle, and give it back to us in chicken feed amounts. And we have been dilly-dallying and playing the fool over the years and saying that the budget is okay, the budget is not something we should quarrel about. But what the last Chief Secretary used to say, famously, this is not something we should argue about. You know, one time it is good, and he goes back and forth every year like that, accepting what it is that has prevented Tobago from developing. In this year's budget, there's no money on the allocation for the Division of Infrastructure for the road from Scarborough to Palatavia. No money. There's no money on the allocation for maintenance for the road from Scarborough to Charlottesville. That is where we are in Tobago, you know.
Right, and so you indicated that you strongly believe that this is the central government that should pay for the port. But based on the relationship now, what obligation do you think they have to do so?
The government in Trinidad, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, has an obligation to develop Trinidad and Tobago. The government has set about a development plan for Trinidad, and over the years the Assembly in Tobago has set about a development plan for Tobago. Before we came into office, at least I can remember for the last 5-6 years, Mr. Jack has been going to Parliament with a budget of $5 billion. And every time they half it. We have been prevented from developing the island in order to foster this paternal condescension from Trinidad that says you must come to us and beg. We are participating in a country where we have no say for resources. They can come anytime and take our oil and gas without consequence.
And recently they would have put forward a proposal to extend one of the jetties there at the Scarborough port. Is that so?
Well, that's another issue.
So how does that impact your overall plan for Scarborough? And what if they do that and say, well, that is our plan for developing Scarborough. We've invested X amount in doing this.
Now, we're going to put a stop to that. The law says that the THA is responsible now for 6 nautical miles from the high water mark. That's what the law says. That means that the seabed and everything in it between this high water mark and 6 nautical miles is the responsibility of the THA. And the EMA should not even consider an application from an entity for an area that they have no responsibility for. And so we will put a stop to that. I think Tobagonians have to understand the strategy out of Port of Spain. The strategy out of Port of Spain is that we will do everything in our power to ensure that this administration in Tobago does not deliver on its promises to the people, because that's the only argument they can have in 2-3 years when an election comes around. How long have the government under Mr. Rowley has been in office since 2015? They had PNM in Tobago. There was no extension of any jetty project. How is it possible now? And so we have to find a way to come together to build not only institutions, but projects that will empower Tobagonians and that will create long-term sustainable employment in Tobago. We sit in Tobago and some of us complain that the THA is a major employer. There's a reason for that. There's no production taking place in Tobago.
Right, and in this situation where you would have highlighted that you feel as though the central government, their effort is to stymie the growth of this current administration.
That's always been so. Not only this administration, but that's always been so. I've made a point about the budgetary request that last administration had. We requested 3.7 billion, which is way below what they have been requesting.
So you don't think an improvement in the relationship can do any good for Tobago in regards to that allocation?
I don't think that we have to. I don't think so. No, but we have to look at the history. We've had PNM in Trinidad, PNM in Tobago, and what we've had from the budget in Port of Spain is 4.03%. They have never given more than that. The law allows them to give 6.9. So the relationship, having both similar parties on both islands, has not worked in our favor.
Right. So are you saying that
it's impossible that
there's no drive to improve that relationship between secretaries and ministers and the Prime Minister and the Chief Secretary? There's no desire to improve that communication or that relationship at all?
Of course there's communication. In terms of the licensing issue, I attempted to call the Minister of Works and Transportation 3 times without response. I've sent him WhatsApp message without response.
But you guys have that type of relationship where you communicate in that way?
Well, we don't.
Previously.
We don't have to have we have to understand.
No, but I'm asking, prior to this whole licensing situation, did you guys have that level of rapport happening?
No, he has never reached out to me.
Okay, but you reached out to him based on what was happening with the licensing
issue. If an issue arises, the issue arose with the stoppage of the bitumen on the boat. Right. I attempted to call. I spoke to the manager of the Inter-Island Ferry Company, and that's the relationship we have. We have to understand in Tobago that we don't have to be friends in order for us to have what we think are our normal
Business
rights.
communication.
We don't have to be friends. The friendship that existed between London and Rowley did not benefit Tobago in any way. The budget, which is our major problem, has always remained that 4.03. It has been sold like that. That has never benefited us.
But do you think that a number of these ministers are holding fast to the idea that they do not need to directly speak to a secretary, and that maybe correspondences should come directly from the office of the chief secretary?
Well, there is that possibility. I'm not in the minds of the minister, but there's always an attempt to subordinate offices in Tobago. And so for them and their strategy, their psychological strategy, one might want to believe that their preference is to speak to the chief secretary.
But the reason why I want to zone in on this relationship is because the city of Scarborough, that project is a huge undertaking. And as you rightfully said, because of the current financial relationship between Trinidad and Tobago, they should play a major role in financing that project. But if the relationship remains fractured, don't you think that would negatively impact the project being able to move forward in regards to EMA clearance and all those other things that are needed in order to have the success of the development of Scarborough?
We're gonna debate the EMA Act in the House tomorrow. Right. But like I said, the relationship that we have is a governance relationship. It's governed by law and policies set out between Tobago and Trinidad by law in the Constitution. It does not require us to be friends. We go to the House in Tobago and we pass a budget in Tobago. We send that to Port of Spain, and the tradition has been that Port of Spain approves the budget and sends it to us. We make a case based on the resources that we have in our waters. We make a case that what we think we should get. Nobody in Tobago can argue that we've been getting a fair share from the budgetary allocation. In terms of building a relationship in order to get the government to give us some money to build the city, the government, through DIQUD, has approached the THA to build majority of the land structures in the master plan. They have submitted a proposal to the chief secretary in order to build out the lands part of the master plan. So they are listening, they are buying into it, and their strategy is to say, listen, we will build it for you. You will have no say in how it is built, but we will build it. They put a big proposal to do it. So it is not that they don't see the value of the project. It is trying to determine who will build it. And so they've put that proposal forward. So the project has been accepted as a good project, certainly in Tobago and definitely in the government in Trinidad. So it is decided now whether the government will finally live up to the internal self-government that we've been granted and be big enough to say, listen, we have to find a way to build Tobago, because a building in Tobago, building the economy in Tobago benefits the economy in Trinidad and Tobago.
Excellent. And we want to hold on to that thought right there. And we're going to take a quick break and we will return right after this, guys.
Start to rise, the energy fill the sky. Yeah. Hey. Tobago updates. Good morning, Tobago.
Good morning and welcome back to Good Morning Tobago right here on Tobago Updates. Guys, if you're just joining, I am having a really interesting conversation with Assemblyman Trevor James here this morning, and we have been talking about a number of topics, but we started out talking a bit about those plans for the development of Scarborough and the relationship between Trinidad and Tobago. We spoke a little bit on how does that relationship affect the development of a number of projects that we want to see done here in Tobago. Specifically indicated was the fact that we still don't have a budget for that road from Scarborough to Palatuvia, neither the one to maintain, need our budget to maintain that Charlottesville to Scarborough route, which is necessary. But as we continue this conversation, we're going to get a little bit deeper into what's happening at the division, at DIQUD. So give us a bit of an update on, as a part of your strategic planning last year, there were a number of initiatives a number of strategies that you wanted to implement to really help improve the division. Where are you guys on that?
Well, when we came into office, Shenelle, we set about firstly trying to have an appreciation of the infrastructural needs across the island. We went on a massive island tour to each district to get the staff at the division to see what works were required to move the island and to bring some level of relief to people who've been suffering for years. And I think we out of that process, we've identified, I think, 200 plus projects which are required to assist the people of Tobago. We decided as well that, you know, we needed to execute more works in-house, and we needed to depend more on development teams. And we brought in a whole new management structure in order to facilitate that process. It's been a year plus, and that process is now beginning to take effect. The portfolio of projects we have put out for the last year and a piece is compared to previous administrations. I don't think the people of Tobago can see the difference between what the division is producing, has produced since we've came into office, as compared to previous years. So that's not in context. That's not a contest. We've started building roads, paving potholes from day one. We've targeted, in some essence, projects that attacks the psyche of the Tobagonian. I think sometimes the strategy is lost on people, but we wanted to find a way through the psychology of delivery to get Tobagonians to see that the quantum leap that's necessary to move Tobago forward has to be done now. We can no longer take 3 and 4 years to build a simple project. The road in the back here that was built in record time is an example of that. The project at Bay Hill in Moriah is another example of that. All the talk about that road, Tobago people don't fully appreciate what the hypocrisy of it. On the budget, under the PNM, that road was budgeted for close to $40 million. We built it for $20 million. They still complain. They still make a hullabaloo about it. Their budget for that road, minus the piece from here to Dutch Fort, was close to $40 million. We built it for half.
Right.
People still complain. So we have set out in the division to not only improve the systems in the division, but we've improved the delivery markedly. We've seen the staff at the Roxborough district deliver a wall in a week in Goodwood and in Glamorgan. Those things have not happened in the past. Our last project that we put out on Facebook in Campbellton and Charlottesville, again, we have, the staff have begun to buy in that we must deliver, and I am appreciative of the staff. I want to say kudos to all the staff across the various departments of the division, because we are finally seeing in Tobago a type of delivery that we've not been accustomed to. URP, just so much to mention.
Right. And one of, as you mentioned, Charlottesville, one of the projects was to fix that Charlottesville entry road going down there, that winding bend road. Talk to us about that. Is that something that is going to be done this year, next year, within this first term?
That is a project that was given to DIQUD. There was a design to widen the road going down on the existing road. We felt that we felt that we should go around the Turpin House, come down the back, which is a view, strangely, that the Prime Minister also had. And we informed DIQUD of that. They have not yet come back to us in how we will go forward. I know they wrote some letters saying they will not do projects in Tobago anymore and that kind of stuff, barring 3 projects. But that's a discussion we would have hopefully for the next dry season, of to see how we're going to build that road and how we're going to pay UDIQUD to build that road. But that is a project that is under UDIQUD
But they
as
had
of
already
now.
been granted the contract to do it.
Well, yes, as a consultant company, yes, they have been granted the contract to do it.
Okay. And so you're saying the conversation would take place within the next
Well, it
dry
will take
season,
place
not
this year,
necessarily
but
the
for
work.
the next dry season, yeah.
Okay, no problem.
Whether they will want to continue, you know,
But how
I
does
don't
that
know.
work, seeing that the contract was already basically engaged? Is it that
Well,
you
contracts can be terminated. There's always a
terminate that
process. There's always a
and open the
process.
tendering for it again?
There's always a process for these things. If there's a willingness by the UDIQUD to execute the works, sure, this is a road that's needed. As you will know, the east and the northeast of Tobago has been left abandoned for many years, and any project in that area is a welcome project to bring relief to the people there.
And this was one of the things that was promised to the people of Charlottesville, that with this new administration, they could see relief coming in this particular area, especially with the entry to Charlottesville. Is this something that you think they would be able to see within your guys' first term in office?
Well, I don't want to make a promise I can't keep. Like I said, we have to look at the contractual arrangements with the UDIQUD. We have to look at the budgetary allocation we have. We have to make a determination because we are moving to projects based on the budget that we have. We have plans, we have projects in the pipeline, but we have to make choices, and then we would look at the economics of it and the benefit of it to the size of population, and we'll make a choice whether we'll do that this year, next year, as the case may be. I can't see, no, I haven't seen the analysis that would affect the choice if we had to spend that money up front as yet.
Okay, and as a part of your strategy and developing and establishing the division, you would have spoken about creating some new structures and systems. That has also been a part of shifting your organization chart as well.
Yes.
So have you been working closely with the MSU to change the structure of the division?
Absolutely. We discussed with the MSU. We went to the executive council. The structure has been approved. So now we're now seeing, like I said, we're now seeing the benefit of it. We've instituted the PMO, which should guide the project's initiation and the whole entire project process. We've seen the benefit of that. We've separated the engineering team to provide consultancy and design work for the projects, and I think we are now getting the benefit of the training of the engineers. We have a training program in CAD and Revit Civil 3D, earmarked, I think, to start on the 8th of May. So that will give additional support to the engineers and bring them up to speed, because we need the engineers to design for us. And I think in the past, that has not been done, and we can't plan and deliver projects in-house if we don't have proper engineering designs.
And this is for all the engineers throughout the division, or just the civil engineers?
Throughout the division, all the engineers are earmarked to participate in this training program.
Okay, how long would the training be? It's here in Tobago?
Yes. It will be here in Tobago. We're still trying to source the money to do it,
okay.
but it's scheduled to start on the 8th of May.
What do you hope to achieve with this level of training outside of having them being able to design in-house?
Well, we have to invest in our staff. If we want our staff to perform at the highest level, as a country, we have to invest in our staff. We bring young engineers into the division. They've left school, and they have little experience, and there is a need to plan a development chart for these engineers. It will only benefit the people of Tobago, and so we have to make that investment now, and we've decided that that's what we will do. And hopefully, coming out of the training, we would see what other training is required and which other staff require training to bring them up to speed so that they can perform at the level that we wish for them to perform at. And these are things that should have been done already, you know. Remember, there's been no training for engineers, as far as I can tell, in the last 10 years. So, you know, we have to build a foundation for the division so we can spring off and build a road in 15, in 20, in 30 days.
I'm not sure what year it was. I think it was in sometime right before the pandemic where the division would have sent a couple engineers to China.
Yeah, but I don't know about that. What I remember is a chief secretary and a secretary for works going to China on
Yeah, they
invitation.
sent a number of their engineers to China right before the pandemic. So I think there was some level of training taking place there. But as you indicated, you're looking to a new level of training or up to date. In what type of training are you thinking about when you think about a new level of training for these
Well,
engineers that they currently don't possess based on the qualifications that they have?
remember, what I've seen in the division is that the structure was that engineers go out and do, unfortunately, what I think to be work that could be done by a technician. So they identify an issue, do an estimate, and do a report. Now, we want engineers to do the design for a wall, for a road, to draw it. This is something new to the engineers because they have not been doing that. But that's what engineers do. And the design part of the engineering work is what we want to target on because we are using the PMO to do the project management work. And so we hope to get more of the expertise, more of the qualifications, the study of the engineer to come to bear on the processes and the projects that we would have.
Excellent. Before getting into office, one of the key sentiments with your administration was that the THA employed too many Tobagonians. However, your division has facilitated the employment of a number of Tobagonians since you have entered office. How many people do you know that your division has employed since you've gotten into office as the secretary?
Well, I don't have the figure of how many persons we've employed, but we have to understand the reality of where we are. Where we are is that we've come out of the pandemic. Tourism was down. The tourism sector is now building back. We've had limited or no agricultural production in any large way. We have no manufacturing in Tobago. The contractors who employ people depend on the state for projects and for payment to employ those people. So those people are essentially THA employees, if you think it through. And so the economy is flat, and we had to find a way to bring monies to the average person. They could take care of their expenses and themselves and so on, and without crashing the whole THA. This is not a problem that we've created. The unemployment problem, the lack of production, the lack of employment outside of the THA sector is not a problem that we've created. We are doing our best now to see how we can alleviate it and plan for long-term development. That's why the only way we can do that is through big projects. We need to bring a different level of employment in Tobago. We need to bring more people into Tobago to build a services sector in Tobago. That's where the employment will come from. And therefore, projects like the Scarborough Development Plan, what the Secretary of Tourism is trying to do in tourism, we need to put the foundation together. There's an expectation, I think, that we can fix all the ills in a year. I think the population, maybe after seeing the road built in 20 days and the steps in a couple of months, remove it in a couple of months, that all the issues could be solved. The reality is, however, that we have a severe budgetary constraint, which means that, to go back to basic economics of scarcity and choice. And a choice has to be made of which projects we would do when, unfortunately, and some will have to be executed at a later stage.
Right. But there has been a concern about the way that these individuals have been employed under the division, with a huge number of those persons being employed under short-term contractual agreements, which a number of persons see as being a means by which a number of people within the sector, maybe even some of your non-supporters, are left out or disadvantaged because of the employment mechanisms being utilized to employ new persons under the division. Can you speak on that?
Well, I don't know about percentages and what's large and what's small. The government has the legal right to short-term employment. It's not a new thing. We have to find a way to to bring people on quickly. The short-term process allows for a period of evaluation to determine whether X individual can do the job or not. This is not a government trying to say we will bring on people who are not qualified and we will give them our work. That has not been what we have done at all. I mean, you could compare that with the amount of persons we have found in various positions across the THA who have zero qualifications and are being paid more than engineers in some places. You know, so that kind of hypocrisy is not what I'm here to talk about. The fact is that we've come into office, we've not gone on a mass firing as what happened in 2001 when the PNM took office. We've threatened nobody. Of course, some persons have been terminated through restructuring and all that, which is normal in a government. But yeah, short-term employment is a legal means of bringing on people, and I don't see the criticism for that at all.
Excellent. Well, guys, we're going to hold a bit here and we're going to come back and we're going to continue the conversation. Guys, we're going to take a quick break. See you right after this.
The energy fill the skies. Yeah. Hey. Tobago updates.
Good morning, and welcome back to Good Morning Tobago right here on Tobago Updates. Guys, if you're just joining us, then I know you definitely need to go back to the top of this conversation because I've been having some talks here with the Assemblyman Trevor James, who is also the Secretary for the Division of Infrastructure, Quarries and Urban Development. And we've been chatting about a number of things. But as we wind up this morning, we're talking about that licensing issue, which has been a big thing in the media recently, when we saw a number of licensing officers coming up from Trinidad and what the Chief Secretary would have said, bombarding Tobagonians a bit there on the roads. Before we get into it, tell us a little bit about that situation from your perspective, and then we will talk a bit about the jurisdiction that the THA has over licensing in the 5th schedule of the THA Act.
Shenelle, this is a very vexatious issue for me personally. The Division of Infrastructure is responsible for licensing under the law. We pay the salaries of the Assistant Transport Commissioner in Tobago and all the staff. They report to the administrator of the Division of Infrastructure. Licensing and transport is under the 5th schedule. This is not like the police or one of those items under the 7th schedule that as national security is. And so the action of the licensed officers and the transport commissioner is illegal. They have come to Tobago without even a courtesy call, without even a discussion with the Division of Infrastructure, who is responsible for the road infrastructure, for the maintenance of the roads, for the management of traffic in Tobago. The division is responsible for that. They have come to Tobago, and by their action, in all this guava and dry season that we are in, they have taken out close to $1 million from the average man in Tobago, charging people for all kind of nonsense about windows not winding up and all kind of craziness that they have done. And I was forced to write about it, you know, because it's that kind of overreach that is similar to what Carlos John did by coming to Tobago and paving roads in Tobago back in the days when the UNC was in power in '95. That is the same overreach. It is as if once there is a different government in Tobago, the ministries and the ministers in Trinidad want to come to Tobago and do what they want. And we in Tobago have to stand up against that. When the Britain gave internal self-government to all these colonies, Britain never came back and hid under a 75 clause and say, listen, this is one country, and therefore we could come and do what we want whenever. You've given up self-determination and internal self-government to Tobago. You need to respect that. And you need to do all and live in the spirit of the Tobago House of Assembly Act and ensure that the Tobago government, the Tobago House of Assembly, is able to manage these things, not to step in as you see fit based on on some nothing data. You know, the premise for the data they use was that there was an increase in road deaths or something like that in Tobago by 300%, because there was 4 deaths for some period. 4 deaths. We can't count the infractions of road users in Trinidad as compared to Tobago. We can't even count it. The hurtful part is that the average man on the street lost close to $1 million in tickets in a week.
Right, and so for clarity for the people of Tobago, help us to understand how licensing officers here in Tobago are hired. Are they hired by the Service Commission in Trinidad, or are they hired under the Division of Infrastructure here in Tobago?
All public officers is essentially hired by the Service Commission. Under the law, the Chief Administrator has the authority to hire on behalf of the Service Commission. What has happened, there are 5 vacancies now on the establishment of licensing in Tobago. They've been vacant for years. Nobody has filled them. It is a failing of the THA in the past, and we hope to correct that. But that notwithstanding, it cannot be that a public servant in Trinidad can bypass the entire government in Tobago and come to Tobago and do what they did. It is wrong, and we're looking to see how we could address it, because we believe that those tickets are illegal.
So, again, for clarity, no correspondences was received by the division or even the Assistant Transportation Commissioner here in Tobago in regards to the officers coming over?
I don't know if correspondence was received by the Assistant Commissioner in Tobago, because we had a resignation recently, and we have a new officer, which we have not yet been able to meet with. We have a new officer there and a new administrator at the division. The administrator has been doing his best to get up to speed, and we have just not had time to go down to license office. The officer came to Tobago, and he has not reported to the administrator. I think the administrator has been looking for accommodation for him, which is one of the requirements as well, looking for accommodation and so on. And I think we are now paying the accommodation for Mr. Mohammed, who was retired but is on pre-retirement leave. So we're now paying for 2 officers, essentially. And the existing new commissioner, assistant commissioner, has not, as far as I'm aware, reported officially to the administrator of the division.
So he has not signed his assumption of duty here in Tobago as yet?
Well, I don't know if he has signed. I really don't know how that works. But as far as I'm aware in my conversation with the administrator, that has not been done.
Right, and if a number of these positions here in Tobago are vacant and most of them are filled by Trinidadians, doesn't that provide a reasoning why the officers would have come from Trinidad to conduct the exercise?
No. A position being vacant in Tobago doesn't give an officer in Trinidad the right to come here and supposedly act in a position. This is not a free-for-all. You know, somebody in Tobago can't go to Trinidad and just say, there's a vacancy down here and there's this problem, I'm going to come and fix it, without even talking to anybody.
Right.
It just can't be done. So there are 5 positions, and it's a failing of the THA. Obviously, it's been years of that, but it has come to this point, and I think we will have a discussion, of course, as to see how we can fill those positions, because certainly, you know, we just cannot accept that. I don't think anybody in Tobago would want this administration to accept that.
Right, and although licensing falls under the 5th schedule and Tobago has the responsibility for that, has any policy regarding licensing and transportation that differs from the national policy been created here at the THA level?
Well, I don't even know if there needs to be a policy that differs from this so-called national policy. I don't know if that is necessary. We have a responsibility to manage this licensing authority. That's our responsibility.
So you don't think we need to create any new policy, just enforce what has already been implemented?
That will come after analysis. I'm saying if we have identified a problem, we have to work with what we have, assess what we have, and determine if new policies are necessary. We have how many inspection centers in Tobago? 1, Sylvester's alone. How is one inspection center going to service all of Tobago in a timely manner? It's a number of problems that would say to a commissioner in Trinidad, hey, I should stay out of this thing. Have a discussion at the very least. Have a discussion. Is it disrespectful in the highest order for them to have taken that action and for them to have been able to use the police officers in Tobago? Again, another entity that has no reporting requirement to the THA. When I say in the past that you know you're under occupation, under colonialism, when your financial resources and your security infrastructure is managed by somebody else. That's where we are in Tobago. They come, they take our resources, they take our taxes, our oil, our gas. They want to take the quarry material, prevent us from getting a license through their system down there. They come up, they take the police, they do what they want. We have to come to the place in Tobago where we can't just accept that anymore.
How do we prevent these type of actions from happening?
Unfortunately, and this is my own personal view, unfortunately, the parliament has been used against Tobago, and we have to find a way to hold a referendum on this matter. I can't see another way.
What are your action steps that you're recommending to the Chief Secretary?
No, well, I have written the letter. I think the letter is clear. At the division, we will do our best to fill those positions now. We'd have to have a discussion with the Chief Administrator, obviously. We would meet with the Minister of Transport. At the same time, I've reached out to him. I just got a text from the administrator that the PS is asking for a meeting. So we will see how that goes. But we don't want this acrimony to exist. But if the government continues to overreach, then we will have a problem. The government in Trinidad has to bat within their crease, bat within the laws, and we could have a mutual respectful conversation. No politician in Trinidad is superior to politician in Tobago. We all go to the people and people vote for us. The people in Tobago expect that when they voted for us in this vast majority, that we will represent them manfully, and we want equity within the relationship.
Right.
And we will do our best to see how we could achieve that.
Excellent. And as we wrap up a bit here, do you think Tobago has enough licensing officers to enforce the policies that currently exist?
There are 5 vacancies on the establishment.
So don't you think that's the reason why they sorely need to
I don't see that at all.
come to Tobago to enforce
They
policy?
can't do that. I don't know how much licensing officers are in San Fernando. Is it enough to cover all of San Fernando, all of the southern area, down to Icacas?
But what about the argument that there's no enforcement body here on the island of Tobago?
There's a license authority here.
Right.
How
But
you mean
in
there's no
terms of the
enforcement?
license, having sufficient human resources, licensing officers
That
to
is
enforce the
corrected
laws.
by a discussion.
Okay.
If the transport
That will
commissioner,
happen in the future.
the transport commissioner jumped out of himself and said, listen, I have made this analysis, and these positions are vacant, and we need to enforce this thing. You don't come as God in the big stick and take money from poor people. You don't do that. That's not how we run a government. You can't do that. We're talking of $1 million in guava season time. Men have to hide home with their car because they have no money to fix a winder on their car. They can't come to work. I mean, we can't run a country like that.
Excellent. Guys, unfortunately, we have to wrap the conversation right here. I want to thank you so much, Mr. James, for coming on and having this discussion with us. But before you go, I'll give you the opportunity to make any of your final remarks if you want to do so.
I want to tell the people of Tobago that your government seems to be under attack, and time is coming and has come for us to stand together to build out in Tobago a government and a governance infrastructure that allows us to manage our affairs. We can no longer wait to get some solution from Trinidad. We have to do this thing ourselves. We have to find ways to bring external funds into Tobago if the government does not see it fit to give us our budgetary requests. And we have to build an independence through infrastructure, through commerce, through tourism, that we in Tobago can survive in this quagmire that is the democratic states of Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, Mr. James, I really hope that we can further this discussion in the future, especially surrounding the whole topic of Tobago's autonomy and how we really build the capacity on the island here in order to attain that. But for now, our time is up, unfortunately. So, guys, that is all we have for you this morning. Thank you so much for making Tobago Updates the #1 broadcast station here on the island of Tobago. Again, I am Shenelle Felix, and whenever you see me here, you know we're going to have those conversations. I'm going to ask those questions. So again, thank you for liking, sharing, and commenting, and just being engaged on a whole. Thank you for submitting all your comments online. I've seen them, and thank you again, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day, and see you soon.